Welcome to Bunnyfish Crafts. I'm your host Heather, known as Bunnyfish on Ravelry, Instagram, and YouTube. Today is Monday, the 30th of March, 2015, and this is episode 122, Mend It March, part 5. Grab some sticks and string and come sit with me. The steampunk knit-along ends tomorrow, so probably today by the time you see this, because I usually don't get it up until the next day, but maybe not. Maybe I'll get this up tonight and you will have all day tomorrow to finish. So I won't be closing it right at midnight my time. I'll be at work. But when I get home from work, if I remember, I'll be closing it tomorrow. And if not, the next day. As long as your project is in by the time I close the thread, it counts. And it could be anything that you can justify as steampunk. I really think if I post this tonight, you would have time to make something tomorrow because it doesn't have to be big. There's no yardage requirement. It just has to be steampunk. If you made between January 1st and March 31st, 2015, a cog in the machine or mechanical bell, if it was finished in that time frame, you can put it in for 2 entries. Anything else steampunk related can go in as 1 entry. And if you used Marigold Jen's copper patina colorway, then you can put that in. You can use a 2nd, 3rd entry, whatever. It adds another entry to your thing. I sound amazing today because I have awesome sinus things going on. You know, when the weather decides for a few days it wants to be 70, and then for a few days it wants to be 20, and then back up to like 60, and then down to 30 again. We're in that up and down phase, so all of this is really, really awesome right now. Also this week coming up is spring break, so I have a lot to show you for this podcast, but next podcast we'll see. It's the first spring break ever for my kid, so we'll see how that goes. I was a little worried yesterday that it was going to be kind of awful because Mara was really, really sick all day. I know, I jumped into knitting and then now I'm back to life stuff. Whatever. She was really sick yesterday. She was throwing up everything. I wasn't overly worried because Gabriel did the same thing a couple weeks ago, and I just assumed that whatever he had caught at school that time, he just brought home this time. And that seems to be what it is. She's in a much better mood today. She is not laying around. And I don't think she's thrown up in probably 15 hours. So we're not doing anything today, which is sad. I was going to take them to the aquarium. That was my plan on Friday. But we're not doing anything today, but I think the rest of the week should be good for doing things with my kids, which is exciting for spring break. Yay! Okay, upcoming knit along. I have a plan. It's not starting in April. We're taking April off, because there are 11 bajillion other knit-alongs that you can partake of, and I don't even know what I want to make in April yet, so I'm not committing to a knit-along. I do know one thing that I have to make in April, which is a baby blanket, but that doesn't have anything to do with anything. I'm just telling you, that's what's going to happen next month. The knit-along in May, June, July, so it's 3-month knit-along. It's going to be all the small things. So any finished object, anything that you finish will count. No yardage requirements, a hexapuff, a barn raising square, some little amigurumi, a sweater, a blanket, a pair of socks, a single sock, a single mitten, a single slipper. Everything will count. There will be lots of prizes, but they will all be small prizes. I already have a couple ideas. I'll just tell you my ideas, because why not? I'm going to go through with them, so it's not a big worry. So pattern prize of $4 or less, stitch marker sets, some fun buttons, some mini skeins. So small things, because I assume there are going to be a lot of entries, so I want to have a lot of little prizes to give away. And we'll solidify that more, when it gets closer to May. That's pretty far away. I know it's going to be here in like 2 seconds, but right now that's pretty far away. So really, I'm doing this because I have this awesome beekeeper's quilt pattern right here that was sent to me with the hexapuffs. So it's printed out pattern. It was sent to me that with those hexapuffs that Christine sent, and I saw that and I was like, oh, I really want to have a knit along kind of for that, but not just for that, in case people aren't interested in doing sock yarn blankets or even smaller projects using modular things. But that got me thinking, and so all the small things happened. And not this week. I'm not ready for it, but probably next week I'll have a giveaway for that pattern. It won't be an e-copy, it'll be just this paper copy, so I'll send it to whoever wins. So look for more information on that next week in prep for the May, June, July knit along. I have a finished object this week. Are you excited? I'm excited. I finished the suggestive message socks. So they're still damp. I washed them last night, and I will take them off of the blockers so you can see, but they're still damp. And I used clothespins to hold them up because I always do that when I'm blocking socks, because I block them hanging instead of flat. I just don't have anywhere to set them flat that will not immediately be laid on by a cat or messed with a child, so I hang them up in my shower to dry. So here are the socks, and also the clothespin helps with these socks in particular. It helps keep the, what is this, ribbing from stretching, from falling down. So here is one sock with the illusion knitting, and I don't think you can read what that says. I don't think you can read what that says, but I am pleased. So that was the first sock. I know, because the second sock I'm a little more pleased with the illusion knitting. Not so much with the front. I still don't think you can read that. That right here. I don't think you can read that. But the back is an arrow. And I think you can pretty clearly see the arrowhead right there. So for illusion knitting, this project for me was a fail. Kind of my fault, because I didn't do any research on how to make illusion knitting work when I realized that it wasn't working for me. So I should have. I acknowledge that that's me not doing the research that I probably should have. But I'll do it later, illusion knitting. It's on my list now of things to definitely try. Oh yeah, this is where I was last week. I was in front of, I had this foot part finished on these socks. Let's show you where the stitch marker is instead of showing myself. So I did the heel, I did the entire leg, did the cuff. The yarn that I used is Knit Picks Stroll. In the hand paints is Make Believe, and that's the toes, heels, cuffs of these socks. And then the stripes are Knit Picks Stroll Tonal in Canopy, that's the green color. And then the purple is Fleece Artist BFL. No colorway name. Something that I did for these socks is, because there's striping, and I didn't do jogless stripes because I've tried it before and I've had only kind of success with the jogless stripes. So on one sock, the seam is on one side, and then on the other sock, I changed where the beginning of the round was to the other side, so that they'd either both be facing inward or outward. I didn't check which one was which. The seams ended up on the outside. Not that it'll really matter. I mean, my sister will wear them as she wears them, because you can't really tell what it says, I don't think. Maybe when someone's wearing them, it's easier to tell. I don't know. But that's the socks. And yeah, I mean, I guess I'll be able to better say what I think about this pattern when I do more illusion knitting. So look for that in a podcast sometime in the future. I will talk back about this pattern when I try illusion knitting again. I was talking to Josh, sort of a knitter, and he said that maybe my problem is that there's not enough contrast between the colors of the yarn. So that could be. I don't know. I don't have experience with this technique, so who knows? I don't know what the problem is yet, but I will figure it out eventually. I have some works in progress, and I'm going to go from least impressive to most impressive. Here are the Charybdis socks, which is the Laura Bennett, nope, not Laura Bennett, Fiona Bennett pattern. And I did very little work on them this week. They kind of got put to the wayside. I don't know, that's what, 4 rounds? Love the yarn, love the colors. There were just other things that I really, really wanted to work on, like these socks that I finished, or the sock that I finished. So the yarn is Science Monkey Mercantile Faraday sock in the Jovian Princess colorway, which I love so much. I love this yarn. It makes me happy every time I work on it. It just gets set aside because other things. I also worked on the ABABA scarf, and the name should be here. I realized that last week I forgot to put it in while editing. I just blinked when I got to that part. I knew I was supposed to do it, and I totally forgot anyway. So I did 1 repeat of the pattern, barely worth showing you. This is Regia lace in color 06577, and I'm holding the lace 3 strands together, so you can see here's my loop that I pull. When I get close to it, I'll pull through another bit of yarn to make the next loop. And it's, I don't know, it might be halfway through the ball, close to that. I haven't weighed it recently because I haven't worked on it very much. But it will also stretch in the blocking. Stretch out and down. I'm going to block it pretty heavily. I do like the way that it looks like this, but I need it to be wider, and I also like the way it looks like that. So either way, the picture in the pattern has it unblocked. It's written for fingering weight yarn. I modified the pattern to be for more of a DK worsted. So I took out, I don't know, 40% of the stitches, I think, and went up to US 6 4.0 millimeter needles for it. Okay, which one looks more impressive? Both of the other projects that I worked on look much more impressive. So I will show you, I guess the hat that I'm designing is next. I'm getting close to finishing. This is where I was last week, right here, right there. That's where I was last week. And here's where I am now. For the first time in forever, basically, I put in a lifeline because I have to figure out decrease rounds now. That's where I'm at in the hat. I'm figuring out decrease rounds. So I would like to say that this will be finished next week and out to test knitters soon. However, it's spring break, so I don't know if that's realistic, especially if I have to rip back a lot. Yeah, that's pretty exciting, figuring out decreases to make it look good with the pattern that I have going on. I guess that's less impressive since I can't really show you. So most impressive. Oh, how about some details on this hat? So the brim is worked on US 1 2.25 millimeter needles. The body of the hat is worked on US 3 3.25 millimeter needles, and the yarn, which I'm holding in my awesome kitchen counter crafter bag, which is javajenny.etsy.com, is Sophie's Toes in the vintage kitchen colorway. The final project is a pair of socks. So all of my socks are knit on US size 1 2.25 millimeters. I always forget to say that, but they all are, unless I specify otherwise. This is the Raison d'Etre by Lisa Tomko. Excuse me for the sniffing. There's actually been a lot of that going on, but I usually edit it out unless it's in the middle of a sentence. So I try to keep it in between when I'm talking so I can easily edit it, because that's gross. Anyway, back to the socks. I am knitting a sample of these for Leading Men Fiber Arts using their Spotlight base, which is BFL nylon. And this is the My Maker colorway. It's kind of a reddy, pinky, rosy color. Almost salmon-y, but not quite. I don't know, it's very, very interesting color. I don't think it's picking up properly on my camera. It's interesting. Anyway, so here's the socks, and I was still in the toe last week. I finished the entire foot, finished the heels, started the leg. And they are cabley and lacy, twisted stitches, lovely pattern. I really, really, really like the pattern. Lisa does a good job. And yeah, this got a lot of attention because I like to make sure that people get their samples back fairly quickly. Hopefully these will be finished this week, but again, spring break. Oh, I keep forgetting that it's spring break and I'm making all these plans in my head. And then I'm like, wait, slow down. Spring break is happening. Next week will probably be called spring break, honestly, because it's going to be all stories and not a lot of knitting probably. So I do have some more knitting this week. Those are all of my works in progress that are not a blanket, but I finished square number 16 for the barn raising square number 16. What are they calling it? Barn raising quilt. BRQ 2015 is the hashtag on Instagram. So this is what mine looks like. And I don't love it. It's not really the square's fault that I don't love it, but I'm thinking, okay, so my plan right now, I don't think I've said this, but my plan right now is to make all of the squares in the blanket using different yarns. So I think it's 200 something squares, all using different yarns, which sounds like a lot, but I do have, I only have about 20 squares worth of yarn sitting next to me, but I do have other stashes of yarn sitting around my craft room, like over this shoulder right here, there's a paper bag with yarn from the ZK. Below that paper bag is yarn from Diane, which has several options. I think about 10 options for squares. I have yarn from Haley sitting in front of me on the desk, and I think there are probably 3 or 4 lots of yarn that are big enough for barn raising squares. And, you know, I'm still going to be knitting. So sounds like a lot of new yarns, but totally possible. And also when I go to the ZK, there are mini skein swaps all the time. And yeah, so 200, maybe like, I think 220 is like the outside edge of what I would need. So 200 to 220 different yarns, totally feasible. I want a different square in this. I just don't love it. It's too pink for me. And I'm not opposed to having pink squares in my blanket, but this yarn in particular, I'm disappointed because this yarn has all of these colorful stripes in it. And I started getting into a colorful stripey bit, but right on the edge, and I would rather that stripey bit be in the middle. So I think that I'm going to use this yarn, make a new square, and then possibly trade this away to somebody or give it away to somebody. I don't know. So if someone else is making barn raising squares that are about 6 inches, this is unblocked, but I think it's about 6 inches. Yes, this is a 6-inch square. And if you like it and you want it, I will send it to you because I'm going to remake it. I'm going to remake this yarn so it's more what I want. Because I went in and I was like, okay, cool, it's got this purple pink square and then it's going to go into the other color stripes, but it didn't. It's just disappointing. And I don't want to have a square in my blanket that I'm like, oh, you could have been better. It's a lovely square. It's a fine square. but I'd rather have this, and I don't want both of these. I don't want both squares in my blanket. So yeah, now I have a homeless square, and I feel like this is probably going to happen again because stripy yarns don't always stripe where you want them when you're making squares and stuff. So I'm going to jump in really quick. I finished recording the podcast and editing the podcast, and now I am back with more square things. So podcast is edited except this part that I'm about to put in, and this is what I did while I was editing the podcast. I remade square number 16. And so this is the one that I don't like, and this is the one that I finished. Well, almost finished. I have to do the border. That's all I have left. And I am so much happier with this square now. It's just, I like this yarn. I like the pink in it, but I really, really love the colorful stripes. So I'm not going to show this next week. Square 16, finished. I have yarn picked out for different square for next week. Gabriel picked it out, and I'm going to honor that decision. But I just wanted to show you square 16 is resolved. I just now have 2 square 16 sitting around. I have new things to show you. And they are lovely new things. So first I'm going to start with stitch markers that I got from the Divergent Club. I didn't partake of the yarn for the Divergent Club, the 716 knit, but I did design 2 of the patterns. And Jenna did allow me to have the fun parts of it. So I got the Divergent pin, which I showed you a long time ago. And I also received, when she sent me the yarns to knit the samples out of, she also sent along the stitch markers, which is so nice, right? I love her stitch markers so much. So these are like the, what are the jump rings, maybe? Jump rings with beads on them, and the beads are the colors of the yarn. And there's also this Raven Crow stitch marker, which matches Triss's tattoo of the birds. So that's awesome. And I really wanted to put these on a project, but did not, because I wanted to show you and didn't want to forget to talk about the stitch markers in my project. So these will be going on a project very soon. And she does great packaging with these rings that you can easily clip onto a project bag. So I could hook it on this right here, or there's also Lindsay, who does the Entirely Crafty Lindsay podcast and has the Sewn by Lindsay Etsy shop. She has this little loop on the bottom. This is my work project bag. I take this to work with me and carry it around on my break and stuff. So it has a whole bunch of bobby pins hanging out on the little loop right now, but this ring would easily clip onto that loop. I will show you. Now I have stitch markers on my project bag. I think that's where it's going to live. I have some other stitch markers to show you, which I'm really, really excited about. So Anne of LFK Stitch Markers contacted me 2 weeks ago, maybe at this point, and she asked if I would be interested in reviewing stitch markers and also giving some away on the podcast. And I said, yeah, that's amazing. So that was super exciting, and I ended up ordering from her shop because her stuff is amazing. But I can't show you what I ordered because it's gifts. So I won't be showing you those. I'll be showing them to you later. They're ZK gifts, so right after the ZK, it'll be in that episode. But she sent along stitch markers for me and for you when I placed my order. And I'm going to show you. She said that I could keep 2 sets and give one away, but I'm not sure which ones I want to keep and which ones I want to give away. I do know that I'm keeping this set right here because I love them so much. These are for crochet. They all have the little lobster claw. And let me put it against the white background so you can see better. So they all have lobster claws, and they are beautiful black beads with silver, silver bands, and then green beads on top. So they're lovely. And I'm keeping these for me because they're my favorite. They are. And then another set is 2 round wire beads, and then a third one with a little lobster claw. So to mark the beginning of the round because it's different, or as a progress minder sort of thing. It's got silver and black zebra stripe beads with pink beads. They have. And then the third set has silvery beads, large beads with these. They're more sapphire in person. My camera is making them look less sapphire, but they're sapphire colored beads. And again, 2 of the loop style and then 1 with a lobster claw. And this is from LFK Stitch Markers. I am going to review them sometime in April and then have a giveaway for one of the sets of stitch markers. I'm not sure which one yet, so look for that next month. But I'm going to review the crochet ones in particular and let you know what I think, what I find. Yeah, I'll let you know. I'll let you know about them. Thank you so much, Anne. I am super excited. And really, her shop is full of beautiful, beautiful things. The reason why she contacted me and then it took so long for them to get there here is not because she didn't immediately ship things, because she did. I placed the order and wrote her a little note, and the next day I got the shipping notice because I placed it kind of late. Or maybe it was that night. I don't know. The turnaround time was really, really fast. Maybe I placed it in the morning and that afternoon I got the shipping notice. I just know it was really fast. So great. That was great. It took me a long time because her stitch markers are just so beautiful that I couldn't not get them, and very reasonably priced. These sets of 3 are $4, which is an amazing price for what you get, like the craftsmanship. From what I see. Obviously, I will tell you more when I work with them. I don't want to just be like, oh, this is the best product ever without having tried them, because when you read those reviews on Amazon or wherever, and they're like, oh, I just got this home and I haven't used it yet, but I love it, it's not helpful. So I will tell you about what I find. And then this pack of, I don't know how many stitch markers are in here. 7 stitch markers, $7. So very reasonably priced, and I will let you know what I think about them next week. And I feel like I'm babbling, but I'm so excited about these stitch markers. I think they're gorgeous, and all of the stuff in her shop. There were just so many beautiful things. I could not pick, and there are some that I might go back and get later because they're beautiful. How many stitch markers do I really need, though? All of them. I need all the stitch markers. I also received yesterday at knitting. I arrived late because Mara was sick, and I sent Steve to the store to get 3 things. I sent him to get vanilla ice cream because it tastes pretty much the same going down and coming up. Just so you know, especially French vanilla. He didn't get French vanilla because it was for Mara. He got, I don't know, a big pail, like the big gallon pails of vanilla ice cream. But yeah, I learned that when I was pregnant. That's the only time since I was like 8 that I've had throwing up go on. And French vanilla ice cream was my friend. So vanilla ice cream, unsalted crackers, and Gatorade so that she could at least keep some calories in. He came back with 10 grocery bags, which means that he was late getting back because he left 2 hours before my knitting thing starts, and he got back to my house 15 minutes before my knitting thing started. So I was late because he bought frozen things, and I had to play freezer Tetris because he's inept at it. He's just not as good as I am at spatial things. He will say he is, but he's not. And yeah, freezer Tetris, and then trying to get Mara to eat something and getting everything settled. I was late to knitting. So Lorraine was sitting there waiting for me. And I sat down and we chatted for like a moment. I pulled out my mug so that I could go get some Starbucks because I always bring my own mug. They're supposed to give you a 10 cents discount, but I don't push it because whatever. Mostly I just don't want to throw away a cup at the end of my meeting every week because that's a lot of cups to throw away. I don't go every week, but you know, at least 40 cups thrown away a year, or I could just bring my own mug. Anyway, she pulled out 5 bags that she had just gotten at an estate sale of DMC floss, and she said, okay, well, take your pick. So I did. I was only going to pick out a few things that I would really use for like doll faces and stuff for Mara. Because I don't do a lot of embroidery. I used to, but I don't do it that much anymore. So I picked out, she had a whole bag of these, probably like 60. What are these called? Skeins? I'm going to call them skeins. Skeins of this, it's 1036 is the number on this, and it's American Thread Company. Pretty good for eyes. And then also this light blue color, 1030, same brand. So I got a couple of those because eyes. And then I pulled out a bunch of browns for eyes. So browns. I'm not going to pull out all of them, but some browns for eyes, and then some pinks for lips and stuff, and I got white and black for eyes also. And that's what I was going to go with. And she was like, well, does Gabriel do those friendship bracelets yet? Like, he's probably a little bit young to start doing those, but he'll be doing them soon. So why don't you grab some thread for that? And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to clear out your orange stash then because he loves orange and I always need red. So I ended up grabbing all of these too. Greens, reds, more neutral colors. And yeah, I grabbed these, and I had a dollar bill in my knitting bag, this one. And I was like, well, this is what I have on me. And she was like, yeah, totally. It's set. That's probably how much it cost me at the estate sale. So there's DMC and Susan Bates Anchor and whatever that brand that I already told you. So a whole bunch of embroidery floss for $1 and hopefully hours and hours of fun for Gabriel making friendship bracelets. And also there will be hours and hours of fun for embroidering for me. I kind of want to get back to that. I miss embroidering. I miss planning out things to embroider. So this week I continued reading. I think I talked about this last week. Station 11. I'm pretty sure that I had just barely started last week, and now I am close to finishing, which is good because this is due back at the library today. It's new, so I only had 3 weeks to read it, so I have to return it because I cannot renew it. Other people have it on hold, which is why I can't renew it. It's interesting. It's about what happens, or what could possibly happen if 99% of the population were wiped out because of a flu virus thing. So it talks about while the pandemic is happening and after the pandemic, and people's memories from before the pandemic. So it's all over the place time-wise, but not in a crazy way, in a very methodical way. And how relationships are formed and are broken. It's really, really interesting. It's not told from the point of view of a single character. It's third person omniscient, and there are several characters involved. I would say probably 6 main characters that it goes around jumping back and forth. Again, not in a confusing way, but you get to see everybody's thoughts on things. I really am enjoying it. I would recommend it, especially if you're into post-apocalyptic or dystopian society things like I am right now. Yeah, I was saying how I wanted a grown-up book that moved away from those things. Well, I did get a grown-up book because I've been reading all the young adult things. Got a grown-up book, but it's still the same kind of thing. Silly. But it's really good. I highly recommend it. And I also started another book because I left Station 11 in my vehicle one night, and I didn't feel like going back out to the vehicle after I was in my room. And I have a small stack of books from the library just sitting in my room waiting for me to start them. So I picked up this one. It is called Crash Into Me by Albert Boris. Ooh, it's written by a guy. Didn't notice. Oh yeah, Station 11 is by Emily St. John Mandel. Okay, so Crash Into Me is a young adult book, and it is... I pulled it off the shelf because I liked the title, but I wasn't sure if I was going to get it from the library. So I read the back of the book, which almost never happens. And it is about 4 teens who run away from home, kind of, and go on a road trip. And the plan at the end, they're all 4 of them are suicidal. They've all been hospitalized for it. And the plan at the end of the road trip is to commit suicide, all 4 of them. It's kind of a heavy book, heavy topics. They talk about suicide a lot, so if you're sensitive to that, maybe not the book for you. I am a little over halfway through the book. I don't know. Again, it's a lot about the relationships that the 4 teenagers are forming with each other and how they do or do not have relationships with people in their separate personal lives. They talk about why they tried committing suicide. It's really, really heavy, and I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, but is it creepy if I say that I'm enjoying the read? Because I kind of am. Not the subject matter, but from a anthropological point of view, it's really, really interesting. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't offend anybody, but I don't know. For what it is, I'm liking the book. Will that make sense? I feel like I'm putting my foot in my mouth. Mending this week. It's the last week of the month, and I didn't do a ton of mending this week because I didn't have a lot left to mend. So what I did mend is this sweater, which is the Sarah by Laura Ayler. I finished it last week, and it just needed tweaking, really. So last week when I showed you the arms, the sleeves were rolling. So I took it out. I took out the ribbing because it wasn't... I said last week that I was going to take out the bind off and change the bind off. Well, I took out the bind off, did a different bind off, and it was still rolling. So I took it out and redid the ribbing. I made the ribbing match the neckband and the bottom ribbing because it had been a graduated ribbing sort of thing on the sleeves, and it was just rolling. So I redid the ribbing on the sleeves. And the other thing that I did was I tacked down the collar on this. So it's tacked down in 2 points so that it just lays nicely. I was having fidget issues with the sweater because the collar would flop in or go too flat out, and it it wasn't sitting how I wanted it. So I figured out how I wanted it to sit and tacked it down in 2 places just with some sewing thread because it was what was convenient. You can't see the places that I tacked it down because when I'm wearing it, you can't see what or where I tacked it down because I went a few stitches in on the underside. Can you see that? A few stitches in on the underside and right on the edge right there. So you can't tell that it's tacked down. It just lays nicely. And that's my tank top that you're seeing in case you're worried about what you're seeing. It's tank top. Yeah, so I did that with the sweater. I wove in the ends on the leg warmers. Finally got around to that. And now fidgeting with my sweater. Whatever. It's good. It looks fine, right? Looks fine. I wove in ends on the leg warmers. I wove in the ends on the socks that I finished. I know. I don't always do that. I'm kind of proud of myself. And I frogged the pink socks that were, they just needed to be finished being pink socks. So this is what I ended up with, 4 small little skeins. I washed them to get the kink out. The kink did not want to leave because they had been knitted so long. I didn't weight them or anything, so whatever, they're clean, they're washed. It's good enough. My plan is to use them for toes and cuffs of socks for Cecilia and Mara for Christmas so that they have matching but not matchy socks because I'm going to use 2 different body colors for their socks. And then with whatever is remaining, I will make a barn raising square. So clearly I'm not opposed to pink in my barn raising square blanket, barn raising quilt, but I just want it to be less of this and more of, it's got all these colors in it. And this one just is too much pink. I also mended something that wasn't mine. So there's a list of one more thing that I need to fix this month and will probably tackle tonight. It is it's a reusable shopping bag and it's got a tear down the center. So I'll be fixing that tonight. And maybe I'll show you next week, but maybe I won't because it won't be Mend It March anymore. It'll be something else in April, probably spring break. But I fixed something that was not mine this week. I have a friend at work and he had a coat, like a suit coat sort of thing, blazer. He had a blazer that was missing a button and he doesn't know how to sew a button onto his coat. And also there wasn't a spare button on the coat. Sometimes blazers have spare buttons sewn around the hems, and I told him what to look for and he said it wasn't there. So we met up at Joann's, and Joann, there's no S at the end. And we bought some buttons. So this is kind of new thing because I didn't have black thread on me. I didn't know what color the blazer was. I didn't ask. So I just brought the thread that I had a needle on, which was dark green. But I also didn't know what kind of button it was because if it was a button with what's that called? A loop on the back, then it wouldn't matter what color yarn or thread I had really. But it was this open type of button. So I have new buttons. They're going to go in my button jar. They're just black buttons and they are a 3/4 inch black buttons and also some heavy duty black thread that we bought while we were there. And yeah, I sewed on, well actually I sewed on 2 buttons because we got there and I was just going to take the coat into the store because why wouldn't you? He was like, that's so weird. Why would you take the whole coat into the store? Just look at the buttons to figure out what you need. And I was like, I can't just look at the button because I'll forget what size it is. And he was like, well, I feel like it would be really weird to take the whole coat into the store. So I said, fine. And I grabbed, there are 2 buttons on the front of the blazer. So I grabbed one and one of them was missing. So I grabbed the other one and I just kind of gave it a tug to see if it would rip off without ripping the fabric of the coat. And it popped off and he was like, and I was like, it's fine. I'm already sewing one button on. like, it's not that big of a deal to sew a second button on. So he was kind of horrified that I ripped the button off of his coat. I was like, I can put it back on. It's not a big deal. Carried the button in. They didn't have a perfect match because it was this style, but they had 3/4 inch buttons and then probably probably 1-inch buttons. I don't think they had 7/8 inch buttons, which is what the coat I think had. It was right in between those two sizes, whatever two sizes they had. So we went with the smaller one, and I put the smaller button on the bottom and the larger button on the top. So yeah, fixed the coat, and now he can wear his blazer again instead of it just sitting around not being worn because it didn't have a proper button. And that all came about because on one of my days off, I went up to work because I really like grocery shopping on my days off at about 11 p.m. when the store is empty and I don't have to take my kids. It's kind of a peaceful thing for me. So I went up wearing that black coat that I had just changed out all the buttons on. And he had said something about the buttons on the coat being cool, like he liked the detail. And I was like, oh yeah, they're all new. I just changed them all out because this was missing some. And he was like, hey, I have a coat that's missing a button. And anyway, yeah. So I fixed that for him. And I'm pretty pleased. It was a Calvin Klein coat, which that's the first time that I've ever like been that close to that type of clothing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I am a thrift store Target shopper, like not really Walmart. I find that their clothes are a little too not great for me, like size wise, and sometimes I find that Walmart clothes wear out pretty quickly in general, but Target has quality. For me, I find it to be higher quality. I don't know if that's same for everybody. Maybe you would argue, but the quality of stuff at Target and the fit of the clothing at Target works for me pretty well. And also, why wouldn't I hit, Goodwill if I can get clothes for inexpensive? So, like, I'm talking $5 shirts all the time because I shop clearance racks and the thrift store. And this was a Calvin Klein jacket. And I was like, I don't think I've ever held a garment that cost this much money, other than a hand knit, obviously. That's different, though. Yeah, it was just really interesting, and I had a moment of like kind of geeking out, like looking at all of the lines of the jacket and the seams, and it was a really nice jacket. It was very well constructed. It was pretty. It was a really pretty jacket. I even put it on because he's kind of a smaller guy. Like, he's maybe an inch or two taller than me, but definitely he has shoulders and I do not because I was swamped in the jacket. It was funny, but it was a nice jacket. Anyway, ramble. I have a few knitting podcasts to recommend because I caught up on all of my knitting podcasts working on the 3 projects that I went crazy on this week, and I caught up on all of mine and needed things to watch. So, the Handmade podcast with Tara and Misty, Tara and Misty, I'm sorry, I don't remember, because I binge watched all of them, so it wasn't like a weekly reminder of how to pronounce her name. Misty is a dyer and Tara is a writer and also does lots of things. But it's an enjoyable podcast. I recommend it. Fibercast with Benjamin. He works for Shacked, and his podcast is a little bit different. He records on Fridays at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, but he does it live. So I think he records through Google Hangouts on air, and it's just him on the screen, but people are able to chat, like live chat with him via text on the side. So he responds to questions. Yeah, it's very interactive with him and his audience. I haven't joined as part of an interactive thing yet, but I might in the future. It's interesting. He also designs some patterns, and then the knitting expat with Mina. She is from England, I believe London, but I might be making that up. And she is in Dubai now. She hasn't been knitting very long, a year and a half. But she loves it. She was laid up for a while with a broken leg, so she really, really got into it. And I am enjoying it so far. There are only 2 or 3 episodes, not a lot for hers. All of these are not a lot. I think the Handmade podcast, definitely less than 20. And the Fibercast with Benjamin is less than 10. So all of them are very enjoyable, and I recommend them. I hope you made something fantastic with your 6 and string, and I will see you next week. Bye!